Good afternoon. My name is Gerard Jounghyun. I'm from the Digital Experience Lab at Korea University. I look back into some of the work I've done in the past 15 or 20 years, hoping they were not some randomly selected research topics just to pass the tenure system or something. It's titled Multimodal Fusion. I've done, I realized that I've done a lot of work kind of put together different modalities to improve experience, user experience in VR and AR systems and contents. And I think one of the core elements in this effort was how to somehow bring about the sense of physicality. And this is where haptics come in. So I want to begin just to tell you something that you already know. VR, many definitions for it. The one that I like is synthetic sensory experience that communicates both physical and abstract things to the human. So if someone asks me what is different from 3D interactive graphics, I would say, given, let's say, a first-person shooting game, it ought to be maybe scary rather than fun and just somehow getting you to kill someone. So VR, one of the creed VR researchers live by is what's called presence. This is, in short, the feeling of the user feeling that he or she is being present, situated in the virtual simulation environment. So there have been a lot of work that points to realism is not everything. Of course, if you have realism, that's good, but somehow, even if you didn't have a very realistic content, you can still achieve presence, which is the goal of VR. And then presence can maybe help you gain that mystical user experience. So I often cite this particular example. This work comes from Bill Slater. This was very old content, training for public speaking. And obviously you can see that the avatars look very unrealistic. This is graphics quality 20 years ago. But they reported, if I remember correctly, that they were able to actually cure people with fear of public speaking. So, anyway, how do you then improve VR experience or promote presence? Of course, haptics is one important element. It brings in the physicality, tangibility, something is there. It can strengthen the spatial perception, which is part of presence, I guess. It gives you the physical realism. Just having many modalities will enrich the experience of this. This is how humans live, I guess, every day with multimodality. But I've just pasted a few pictures of the regular or conventional haptic and tactile systems. The robot, the exoskeleton, tactile array, and I put because that brings about the question of usability, which we talked a lot about, I guess, this morning. We talked about realism versus usability and how do we manage this thing. Usability is about ease of use, how easy it is to learn, to use the system, fatigue, sickness. There's, I guess, performance and efficiency issues, ergonomics, mentally and physically, also social aspects and so on, cost, and I guess also mobility is very important. So that's an extreme picture, I guess, an old HMU system, which is basically unusable, I would say. So there's this presence versus usability battle or fight. many directions to this issue, and I put in red because this is about haptics. So in terms of haptics, the devices are clunky. Does it, deliver sufficient amount of force or resolution? Can they be made somehow tiny? Maybe not invisible, but tiny enough so that it can be wearable and not in the way. But I'm thinking if you wanted to provide, we need to provide sufficient amount of force for something. Maybe the device ought to have some minimum volume or mass. And how do you minimize such a thing, miniaturize such a thing? And I'm thinking, is that really physically possible or not? And I guess a related problem is operating range, the price, how you set these things up. Gloves, since 2 or 3 years ago when, the new, I don't know if it's the second or third revival of VR has happened since the Oculus HMD came out, many glove systems also came out in the market. It's not like we didn't have glove systems before, but still we have lots of problems with gloves. Just because, for myself, even in minus 10-degree weather, I would not wear gloves because it's just a nuisance. So other similar issues with respect to tracking and whether the system is tethered or not, serving multiple users, and so on. And one side question is, do I really need haptics anyway, right? Of course, some of the underlying assumption is physicality is good, haptics is necessary, right? But this is a small experiment I've done before. What you see is a smartphone that has a stereoscopic display. You cannot see that in the video. And I thought, and this was a parallax barrier screen, so you have to be in a sweet position to be able to appreciate the 3D effect. So I thought if you were a little bit off, you make errors in manipulating and positioning objects. So I thought we can add multimodality, like add sound and haptics. If you see the graph, when you add, so this H means haptic, A means audio, and VHA means you have all the 3 modalities, visual, haptic, and audio. So of course this is the best, this gives you the best performance time and least error almost. But it seems like the addition of haptic didn't contribute that much. So in this particular case, audio was the best case. I don't know if this experiment was run the right way, but I'm just trying to illustrate the point. So we have this usability problem. So just like everybody else, how about using vibrators? They're small, they're cheap, effective in many cases. But like the array system you have seen, if I want to create some kind of a reasonable effect, I guess I need to use many vibrators here and there. This is, by the way, Professor Jounghyun. This is 2004. So we had him wear this vibration system and walk around an alley in VR, and we tested for presence and things like that. Another student of mine developed an array of vibrators put on his back and tried to convey some direction information and so on, but not really usable, as you can see. I can't wear it. How about using cheap passive haptics, right? I guess this is somewhat usable. I mean, there's no setup required. You can just use any prop, I guess, whatever suits the situation. But I guess it's not so flexible because it's designed for a particular purpose. I will just skip this. This was a small prop for evaluating effective properties for cell phone design. So maybe I. Vibrators enough. Maybe want to provide more than just on and off information. So I thought we can maybe design some kind of a trackball. This was the prototype, but our idea was we could put this on a cell phone. At that time, there was a cell phone which had a trackball, and this is defunct now. So anyway, I had tried a few different things, but I came to a conclusion they were somewhat limited. So I thought, like the title of my talk says, try multimodal fusion and do something with that. So I think you know what multimodal systems are. Systems that process two or more combined user input-output modes, such as speech and gesture, body movement, and so on and so on. I just want to say it's not just about using 5 senses. I would say just using any number of different methods would constitute as a multimodal system. So reason multimodality is important and useful is, the usual reasons is usability. I guess we live in a multimodal world. So that means it's natural. I guess it's easy to learn. Maybe it's preferred by users. It's flexible because you have different methods. They can be complementary. Maybe they are redundant and they can strengthen the signal or information you're trying to convey. And that could make the task you're trying to achieve through the multimodal interface very efficient. But I focused on something else. How can we, using multimodality, get something with something else? And that's probably called the substitution effect. And I think one of the speakers today spoke a little bit about that. So maybe this refers to the cross-modal integration, modality substitution, illusion, that kind of stuff. And this is not new. This is something that we have observed. Network effect, ventriloquist effect, they have been known for a long time. Phantom limit, that kind of stuff. Synesthesia. So, just want to walk through some of the things I've done with regards to multimodality. A long time ago, I had this work. Although today's HMD has improved, even the cheap HMDs have more than 90 degrees field of view, but back in that day, they were quite limited, maybe 45 degrees or something like that. So my student had an idea, how can we overcome this problem? Because if you have a small FOV, that kind of degrades the experience and lowers the sense of presence. So he thought, okay, you're gonna, now this is the physical field of view, so, but let's scale down the world so that within the view, you can see everything, let's say. So that's effectively increasing the FOV, but not physically, right? So it's called softer field of view or the geometric field of view. But what would happen is, probably if you did that to the extreme, you'll get a distorted depth perception because everything becomes smaller. So we thought, okay, how can we, so to what degree can we do this without making depth perception suffer too much? And so our hypothesis was, okay, in the beginning, with one-to-one scale, with respect to one-to-one scale, you underestimate about the depth. As you distort the field of view, you will quickly overestimate and get, very bad depth perception. But my student, said, why don't we add on multimodal interaction to this situation, thereby making this plateau much larger, meaning I can play with the geometrical field of view to a larger extent, yet maintain the correct depth perception. So again, he conducted a very crazy many factors experiment and so much this was possible, meaning one could maybe increase the software field of view to up to 1.7 times, yet maintain the almost correct depth perception. I don't think 1.7, the figure itself, is important, but I'm just trying to point to the possibility of using multimodality for fooling the user into something. In this case, perceiving a larger field of view. Another work, I got interested in doing VR on a handheld device. And in the beginning, I thought this was not possible because smartphone display is just so small. And there's no way you can achieve the level of presence that usual VR research is gunning for. But then in the subway, I saw these kids, being immersed in, playing these games on a smartphone. So we did this experiment, compared these 5 configurations. This is not a smartphone, but at the time, PC, I forget the name of it, handheld PC. So this guy is interacting with the VR world with a motion-based interface. If you move around, right nowadays we have the gyros. We can do this very easily, but then we have to use a camera, which is mounted in the back of this device. So you move around and use motion-based interface to interact with the VR world. This one, same thing, but he's interacting with the buttons. This one, all of them interacting with the buttons or keyboard, but larger screen size. So this is the same size as that, but fixed, not handheld. This one is the same thing, but larger screen and even larger screen. So, and what we found, the task was to navigate around, select some objects and so on. And what we found was something like this. The presence and immersion was actually the best with the motion-based handheld device compared to the other ones. And when we asked about the perceived field of view, it was also very large. And also having a lot of difference between the actual physical FOV. The one in the hashed bar is the perceived FOV, and the one in the white bar is the actual perceived field of view. So when you use a motion-based interface, something that's dynamic and more natural, you're thinking, okay, it fools you into thinking the field of view is larger, and which also leads to maybe increased presence. In the other cases, you can see that when you use the button-based, keyboard-based interface, the actual field of view and the perceived ones are almost the same. So that was a research looking at some, I guess, beneficial effects of multimodal interface. Now, this work is something that deals with the illusion effect. Maybe everything is about illusion. With respect to haptic feedback. So the motivation was the same. This kind of device has high mechanical complexity. It's costly. Maybe it's unnatural because you have to have a big part of your body put on the device constantly. How can we maybe reduce the number of actuators that are needed? I just hit upon some literature. I read about this out-of-the-body, the tactile illusion. I think many of you are maybe familiar with this funneling and sensation. You stimulate certain part of your body, but basically, depending on how you deliver the stimulation, you can induce a factor sensation in between, or even in a dynamic way. I won't go into the details. So I thought, okay, maybe we can apply this illusion effect to maybe do away with many of these actuators. Maybe just use 2 or 4 actuators instead of, let's say, 25 or 36. And I also read about this out-of-body tactile illusion. The original paper which described this illusion was something like this. You had a vibrator at the end of the 2 fingers here, and if they were connected by some physical object, in the paper they used a simple ruler. You can induce a tactile feedback as if it came from the ruler, which is out of your body. So here, the original funneling and salutation induces phantom sensation as if coming from your body, not from out of your body. Right? But this one is as if coming from the ruler. I don't know how to convey that to you. Anyway, this seems interesting to me, so I thought maybe we can apply this to AR. So something like this, right? You might have a marker like this, and then I have maybe a embedded vibrator here, just 2 of them. I'm holding it. I'm also, in touch with the vibrators, and I have some, augmented object here, and maybe I can simulate some, haptic dynamics through this. So the very first thing we did was, whether this funneling and salutation and out-of-the-body phenomenon would be valid not just for real objects, but for virtual objects. And we were able to show that, and so on and so on. So I skipped through the more details. And we also apply the same principle to maybe fitting a smartphone with maybe 4 vibrators in the corner, and the person would, grab the phone in this way. So there are only just 4 vibrators delivering stimulation to the user, but we would try to, through the salutation and funneling illusion, we would be able to deliver the content being presented in the middle of the smartphone, so as if some dynamic physical events occurring here would be felt. So we apply that to this game. So there are 4 vibrators in the corner. Bricks are being hit upon, but you maybe feel physicality coming from the very location of the bricks being hit. Another application, we call it bridge pinch. We put the vibrators in 2 fingers, and this is just a direct application of what we have done over here. And we could maybe use this for 2D and 3D interface, grabbing and pinching a moving object and feeling for its dynamics. Maybe I'll show you a video. I don't know if that's. So I think there's this fly. And try to grab it. You feel it's moving back and forth through those 2 vibrators. So it's not just collision. We were able to show that the user was getting a feel that's not just the mere collision of this fly onto that particular position, but it was more than that, some kind of dynamics of going back. Another work, we call it grounded bar. It's a grounded because it's connected, well, it sits on the ground. And this person, as you he leans on this stand, okay? And there's this bar. This guy is kind of holding himself on, and I marked this red thing, meaning his entire body is being involved in interacting. What do you do with this? You can do something like this. You can push the bar to the front, like it's a cart, to go forward, pull it back to go backward, twist it to go left and right, and so on. So you can even design some interaction, not just for navigation, but maybe selection and manipulation. We didn't do that. We tested it for, as a navigating interface. It's a kind of cart metaphor. And we even tested whether the metaphor had to be a cart metaphor. We use the same bounded bar interface for the driving metaphor like here. And we could use that. So we were able to show that perform pretty good completing the maze and avoiding collision to the wall and so on. So I've shown you some of the work I've done with regards to applying multimodality. This is another work, but this is maybe it's going to give you a different message. I thought maybe multimodality could be beneficial for multitasking support. So you're doing different things at the same time, and one of the issues in multitasking is how do you interrupt a current task, maybe give you a reminder for another task, how do you switch back to the task you were doing without too much mental cost or even actual cost. So I thought maybe a multimodal reminder could be a good thing. So you're doing, you're texting, you're listening to music, you are doing something else, maybe there's an alarm, the text has arrived. How do you alert the user the most effective way and non-damaging way, let's say. So I thought multimodality was a sure thing to use. So we compared many different, we devised a multitasking task, and we tested these interruption feedback with visual only, additional visual information, oral and tactile. And what we found basically was, if you use too much multimodality, it actually lowered the task performance. And so that was, I guess, an acceptable conclusion at the time. And I should have maybe known better, because did I tell you I play tennis? So we've done another work, similar work, called AR Tennis Coach. So the idea is I wear this glass as a tennis player, and there will be a coach on the side, and he's sending me information about how to play, which directions to send the ball, whether to lob or approach the net or something like that. So he's coaching. So this is the type of visual information that it will overlay over the glass that I'm wearing as a player. So that would allow me to play Djokovic and Williams. So anyway, what we found here again was when we used all of the modalities, show the arrows and give you voice information of how to play, even alert the user in some way or another using tactile feedback, that distracted the user. And that was because we think this particular situation was a very fast-paced task. You had to react to the other person, the other player, like within 2 or 3 seconds. And I think this was the same situation here. In this particular multitasking thing we have devised, what the user had to do was very fast-paced. So this multimodality thing was very distracting. So it's not just, I guess I'm not saying haptic is bad, but I'm saying when you consider mixing up different modalities, you want to be careful about these kinds of things. Of course, there are other possible complications. One modality interfering with one another, and so on. Okay, so I'm nearing the end of my talk. I just want to maybe end my talk with some recent work I've done, also somewhat related to multimodality. One of my students have become interested in testing this type of a mobile VR system. Or I don't know if I should say a system, but you guys know about the Google Cargo, right? So, but this one is still, it was meant to be a cheap and convenient way to do mobile VR, but still it's somewhat bulky, and people who do this use this not that much as expected. There's a new similar thing where you can just flip on these lenses. There's even a version that's integrated with a phone case, so it's even easier to put on these lenses and use them. The problem that you might immediately recognize is this is open. It's not isolated, right? So you get probably less immersion, so it doesn't qualify for VR, one might say. So we tested that, and one thing is, although it's not presented in this slide, you were able to show the level of immersion was actually pretty at par with the closed, isolated cardboard or actual HMD VR systems. And in addition, what this is good is it gives you physicality in an easy way, because now you can put your finger through here and touch the screen and do interaction just as you have been doing this with the regular smartphone games. And then one might say, okay, is this actually possible? Because you have the lens between your eyes and the finger. And you might say, oh, I would not be able to pick or select certain object correctly because of the lens coming between my eyes. But we found that was not the case. Your fingers might look blurry because it's not focused, and you have the lens in between. But because of your innate ability, proprioception, you are able to actually correctly select objects on the screen and effectively interact. So that's, I think, one way to maybe proliferate mobile VR in another way, because these flip-on lenses are even easier to use, and now you have the ability to use the touch screen, and it gives you natural, almost passive haptics without resorting to a separate interaction controller with complex haptic feedback. Maybe I'll show you this. This one is the same thing. You touch it, but the object is selected as you release the finger from the screen. That happens to be a better resolution to go. This is also actually interesting with respect to haptics. This is a work I've done with Professor Susan. It's called Drop the Beat, meaning trying to lower the heartbeat. It's a VR-based mindfulness content, and it's just a peaceful content, basically. But the point is, we have a haptic device over here, and the content shows a heart, which is meant to be your heart. So although it's not shown here, what the user will do is you take out his heart, put it on his hand, and feel for its beating. And the content was designed this way because the doctors told us that in order to get out of this panic disorder situation, you have to understand scientifically or rationally your heart is not going to blow. And the way to do that is maybe show you the heart, which is supposed to be used, and just vividly show it's beating okay, and you're not going to die. And this feedback is even more strengthened using a physical feedback rather than just seeing it through your eyes. So, and I'm proud of this work because we have applied this work in an actual operation. So this is a stencil operation going on, and you can see the patient wearing an HMD, looking at this very contents. And all that's not seen here, on the other side, there's a haptic device that person is, holding on to feel for the heartbeat. And we did this because these patients are not, what is it called? They're not put to sleep. They are awake, and they're extremely scared. So through these contents, they were able to stabilize their blood pressure and heartbeat levels, and also stabilize their mind and not feeling so scared. And we had, we tried this system to like 40 different patients, and quite successful. I'm writing a paper right now. And one of the patients, like the old lady, was so thankful for being able to use the system and escape from the scare she had. And finally, also another cohort with Seung-Min Choi, we are looking at the effect of what's called onomatopoeia. These are like sound text, like bang, trunkle, or something like that. And we want to see how adding these sound words can maybe heighten the level of presence or even add to reality. So if you're using a haptic device to interact physically with certain objects, we think no matter how good of research you might have done, there are some limitations to these haptic devices, but adding these sound words might even improve the reality you feel. So in conclusion, I presented my take on how to maybe achieve rich physical yet effective and usable experience. I think today's usable devices are relatively equipped well compared to, let's say, unusable big VR. Of course, we have this dilemma all the time, whether to go for usability or go for the presence and experience. Through my experience, I believe we should choose. If you are at this dilemma, you should choose for usability. That's my thought, my take on it. I think usability is actually the experience. But in any case, there's some room, or still possible, to produce rich physical and effective experience without maybe resorting to so complex devices and so on. By perhaps relying on synergistic effects of multimodal integration and illusion, and so on. Okay? So that's my answer. Thank you.